In today's podcast, we're going to talk about market sizing and ask that all-important question. Does size really matter? In business, you bet it does.
Welcome to the Land.MBA podcast, where we go deep into the business of land investing.
Do you remember like several years ago when every Super Bowl just totally sucked?
Yeah, like when the NFC would blow out the AFC for several years.
Yeah, it would be like, okay, it's 32 to nothing after the first quarter. And like, I don't really want to watch the rest of this game.
Yeah, exactly.
Football is one of those sports where, size really does matter.
Yes,
and there's always that occasional small kid who is super fast and super, athletic. But for the most part, you're not going to play guard or tackle or center if you're not a pretty big guy. And that's the way it is oftentimes in business too. Size does matter, and particularly the market size, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Tell us, Howard.
Well, imagine, you're starting a company. Let's just imagine, if you will, that it's a land company and you have to pick a county. Are you going to pick a county where there's not a whole lot of land for sale? Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we want to go where the opportunity is. And so this exercise of understanding how to do market sizing is really important. Now, we could go and get some information, and say, okay, how much land or how big is the county? How many acres are there or whatever? But that doesn't really answer the question. It's good to have a bit of a methodology here. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about it from a pure business perspective, this whole concept of market sizing. And then David, maybe you can help us translate it into the land business. Okay. But market sizing is really important in business. It's, if you're going after investors, it's really important because, especially if you're going after like VCs, if there was that kind of a business, they don't even want to talk to you if you're not going after a market, a market that's $1 billion or bigger. They're just not even going to give you the money usually.
Yep.
But you want to go after a bigger market. So, and you want to get this information right, because every time you make a decision to do something, whether you realize it or not, you're also making a decision not to do something. If I decide to go into this county, I'm making a decision not to go into that county. So there is an opportunity cost with every decision. So we want to be smart about it. And when the professional marketers think about market sizing, they actually bring it into this concept. There's 3 concentric circles. And so the biggest circle on the outside is the total available market. Sometimes they call it the total addressable market. And that basically says, okay, how many people or how many businesses are there that could potentially buy what it is you're selling in total? The absolute biggest number, right? Mm-hmm. But that's just the starting point. Then there's this circle in the middle, which we call the service available or the served available market. And that means, okay, now when I get past just the category of what I'm selling, let me talk about the specifics of what I'm selling, because it may not be for everybody. I designed a product that goes after a target market that, so not everybody is going to be served by it, but, some subsegment will. And so I need to size that. And then the smallest concentric circle in the middle is what we would call the share of market, which is, okay, within that market of people who would actually buy what it is I'm selling, what share of the market can I reasonably get? Because I'm not going to get 100% of it. And then you can start to really understand what your opportunity is. So there was I brought many products to market in my career. One of them was an emergency notification solution. And this was like a reverse 911. They're all over the place now, but back when we were doing this in the early 2000s, it didn't really exist. This was right after 9/11 in 2001. So what it would be like is, let's just say that you were living in the shore and the coastal areas of New Jersey, and a hurricane was coming in. Well, this system would have everybody's telephone number and email address and fax number and pager number, and in a big database, and it would just start hammer dialing everybody saying, an evacuation order has come. You need to evacuate. And it'll keep hammer dialing everybody through all these different modalities until somebody responded and say, okay, that person responded. I don't have to keep calling them. We'll call the next. Well, who is going to buy something like that? Well, police departments, fire departments, county governments, things like that. So when you go to size a market, there's two ways that you can do it. You can do a top-down, what they call a top-down analysis, or you can do a bottoms-up analysis. And the top-down analysis would basically, a lot of times you're just using secondary research. So you're saying, oh, well, the number of people, somebody else has done a bunch of analysis. So, well, we think the size of the market for emergency notification solutions is, 5,200, whatever it is. Or you're just kind of looking at big, broad-based numbers to come up with your answer. The bottoms-up analysis is much harder, but it's actually much more accurate. So that's what we did. So what we would do is we would go to U.S. Census Bureau information, and we would say, okay, within this geography that we're looking to sell into, how many police departments are there? How many fire departments are there? How many county governments are there? And we basically built up all of the different sub-markets that we were going to go after, and we would add them all together. And then we would go and say, okay, that's the total available market, but are they all actually big enough to buy what we're saying? Could they possibly have the budget for what we're charging for it? Well, actually, only a percentage of them would have that. So then we shrink it down into the total served available market. And then from there, we can say, okay, we think we can get 20% of the market, and that becomes our share. And that's really what becomes our business plan.
Right.
And this is really important, and it really applies, I think, to the land business as well, because the first and most important strategic question we ask in this business is, what county am I going to go after? And it's not like we're going to ask this question once. We're going to keep asking this question as our business, because we're always going to be looking for new counties so we can grow our business. And so one of the key questions we're going to ask in that county selection process is, how big is the market? Is it just me, or is it getting harder and harder to count on a job for our financial security? Who would have ever believed that we would go from the lowest unemployment in 50 years to 40 million people unemployed? Whether you have a great job and want to create a second income, or you're recently unemployed, you need to check out Land.MBA, your one-stop shop for land investors. Investing in vacant land is a proven business model that can help you build a reliable and scalable second income. Imagine a business where you love what you do. There's no limit on how much money you can make. You can operate your business from anywhere in the world with an internet connection. And best of all, you can never be fired or downsized. If this sounds good to you, Land.MBA provides everything you need to get your business up and running and delivering income quickly. You get education, an end-to-end video course, and optional coaching to help you get started faster and turn your energy into income. You get tools so you can automate and outsource the busy work and stay super organized. You get access to a thriving community of like-minded investors, which is a powerful way to share best practices and develop potential partnerships for growing your business. And finally, you get access to deal financing, so you never have to pass on a great investment opportunity due to limited funds. Our team has over a decade of real estate investing experience and has the knowledge and experience you need to help navigate any investing scenario. And with Land.MBA, we hold nothing back. Because there are no upsells, you get access to all of our combined knowledge right out of the gate. So don't wait to provide your family with financial freedom. Sign up today for Land.MBA's Soup to Nuts Land Investing video course. Just go to courses.land.mba and use coupon code FREEDOM to get 25% off. That's courses.land.mba and coupon code FREEDOM. And let us help you say goodbye to your job and hello to financial freedom. So, Dave, you are obviously a very skilled land investor. So how do you size the market opportunity?
Well, first I look at a state, and I want to focus in on a state, so that, and then I'll select counties within that state, and then move to another state, versus just getting all over the place. But I'm going to look at the size of the county. I may, at a first glance, I may go onto a product like Zillow, And that might be a first taste test and I pull up that county. I set filters of acreage range, and I look at how many sales versus solds. First you might want to look at, the total number of properties available. You can look at that with, setting your filters in any of the major land sites, LandWatch, Zillow, the land.com sites, and get a pretty good gauge for, and DataTree as well. That is a fantastic tool for that. And then look at how many are for sale, how many are sold. And if there's a reasonable balance, then you could take the next step on that county. That's one of the early first steps that I'll use.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so if you go and look at the total number of vacant lots in a county, and maybe you could do that through something through DataTree or a tool like that, I would kind of consider that to be total available market. Yeah. Right? Because, the total number of vacant lots, right? Because we're not just looking for ones that are for sale. We send letters to everybody. So that's the total available market. But if I really want to know what the size of the market opportunity is, I need to, because they don't all sell every year, right? So only a small percentage of them transact in a year. So what I want to know is how many vacant lots transacted, say, last year. And that would be the annual size of the market for a particular county. So let's just say, using easy numbers, the county has 10,000 vacant parcels, but 300 of them actually transacted last year. There were 300 vacant lot transactions last year. So that's the total served market.
Yeah.
So 300. And the interesting thing is, when you do that analysis, what sometimes you'll find is that in county one, you could have like 10,000 total vacant parcels. And in county number two, you could have 15,000 total vacant parcels. Yep. But actually, the county with the smaller number of vacant parcels transacted more last year than the larger one. Right.
Yeah. So, and that could be directly related to parcel sizes.
Yeah.
Because you have some counties that have nothing but big, 40-acre or a high number of 40-acre parcels, where this other county has a lot of parsed out counties, properties, and there may be demand. There could be demand for the big recreational properties in that county. You don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when people ask me, the question about county selection, I say there's a lot of criteria I look at before I select a county. It is a very strategic decision for me. But if I have to choose one metric above all others, it's level of activity. Yes. So, while I care about the size of the county in terms of how many vacant parcels there are, what I care a lot more about is how many transacted last year. Because nothing I'm going to do is going to substantially change that number from last year to this year. That's roughly the size of the market opportunity, is how many transacted last year. And I know that I'm only going to get a small percentage of that. So my market share, which is the smallest of those concentric circles, is going to be proportional to the size of, the total served market, which is going to be roughly the number that transacted last year. So market sizing is absolutely critical. First, to know how big the market is, and then to know how active it is, how fast do properties move, things like that. Right.
And that size of the market served, in other words, how many transacted, and actually, I guess I kind of skipped a step, because what you said is more accurate in the order of things. But then you look at, okay, how many transacted, and then you look at a couple of websites like Zillow, LandWatch, Lands of America, things like that, and you look at the for sale versus solds inactivity as well, because you just want to see a reasonable snapshot of solds and sales. And if you look at something and you have a ton for sale, and you also look at some of them have high days on market, and you have a very small amount sold. So maybe 300 transacted, but 3,000 were for sale. I'm just throwing numbers out of my hat, but that would tell me that, okay, there's some activity, but there's a lot of people trying to sell their land, and this might not be. I'm going to go in there and have a lot of competition.
Right, a very competitive marketplace.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I've seen recently on the Facebook pages people asking questions about days on market, and frankly, I don't use it because that information is primarily gotten from MLS, and I'm not a real estate broker, so I don't have access to the MLS. And for the business that we're in, MLS only represents a small percentage of land transactions, so it's not necessarily that accurate. What I like to use is Zillow days on Zillow, because there's more information and it's more relative to the kind of properties we're moving. But it has to be done in a very particular way to be useful. So one of the cool things about Zillow is that when you create the filters for the data set that you're going to pull up, you can say, okay, I want this county, and I want it. Days on Zillow, it just relates to the for sale properties, not the sold properties.
Right.
So then I
would
say,
be nice.
What's that?
Would be nice if you could get the days on market unsold, how long it took to sell.
It would. But so I'm just going to set in my filters this county, and I'm going to say just land, and I want just for sale properties. Mm-hmm. And then you can set a time frame, and you can say, I only want properties with days on Zillow, say, of 180 days or less, or 360 days and less. Right. And then you do that for a number of counties that are, within the same state or within a proximity. And you make sure that the filters you use are identical for each county that you look at, so that you've got an apples to apples comparison. And what you might find, so there's two critical pieces of information you're going to get with that. One is how many properties match the filter. So that's going to give you an indication of opportunity size. And two is what is how many, days on Zillow. Now, there's two ways to think about to evaluate the data for days on Zillow. You can just take an average. I don't recommend that you do that. Averages are bad, because there are always properties that they don't make sense. That the numbers don't make sense. They're outliers. And so either you have to then do another step, which says, let me remove all the outliers so that I can trust the average, which is hard. You got to kind of have to know how to do data analysis to do that. But an easier way to do it would be, instead of using the average, use the median days on Zillow, which basically means at this point, half of my data set is higher and half of my data set is lower. So, you're kind of assuming at that point that if I have outliers, I've got them on both sides. And I'm just looking for that price in the middle. So this is the median number of days on Zillow. And then you can take that and compare it from county to county to county. And you can see in which county properties are moving faster, in which they're moving slower. So if I've got one county where my median days on Zillow is, 179, and I've got another one where my median days on Zillow is 66. Well, boy, I know that if it's 66, properties are moving a lot faster. So long as when I did my filters, I'm doing an apples to apples comparison.
Hey folks, my name is David Van Steenkist, and I've been a real estate investor for over 10 years. I've used lots of different tools, but none of them has done for my business what LandSpeed does. LandSpeed covers every step in the land investing process, from ordering mailing lists to marketing, sales, and closing the deal. What I really like, though, is it anticipates my needs. When I think, I wish I had a quick and easy way to evaluate return on investment on a potential property, look no further, LandSpeed does it. If I want to edit a deed after LandSpeed creates it, it can do that too. Most systems just stick you with a PDF that's uneditable, and you got to go back into the system and edit the fields and do whatever you need to do, and it's a real pain in the rear end. LandSpeed simplifies it. If I want to send 1 or 5 or even 40 neighbor letters at the click of a button, bam, LandSpeed does it. But even with all that inherent capability, you get access to LandSpeed Community, you get weekly mastermind calls, and you get the best mailing rates in the business with no volume commitment, which is freaking awesome. Because if I just want to pop one contract to somebody, I don't have to pay $1.50. I still pay the bargain basement rate. And on top of that, customer service is stellar, quick, and they just do a great job. I've been very, very happy, very pleased with it. And look, I've been running my business on LandSpeed for over 2 years. So take it from me. If you're serious about your land business, then check out LandSpeed at facebook.com/landbizautomation. That's land, B-I-Z automation. And if you want $100 off, tell them you heard it from me, David Van Steenkist, on the Land.MBA podcast.
So in Price Boss, when you scrape all the data out of Zillow and put it into Price Boss, it immediately just calculates all that for you. It tells you what's the lowest number of days on Zillow, the highest number of days on Zillow, the average number of days on Zillow, and the median number of days on Zillow. So it just gives you the answer. Yeah. So it really does make that a lot easier. And like any kind of data analysis, the more data you have, the more accurate your analysis is going to be. So trying to get that information and do all this in a manual, say manually on a spreadsheet, will take you a very long time. So the nice thing about Price Boss is you can just scrape a page, put it in, scrape a page, but you can scrape 5 pages really quickly, put it in there, and boom, it just gives you the analysis.
Exactly. And it just, not to beat a dead horse, but more data is good, but you can also hit a critical mass where it's like any more doesn't do you any good.
You definitely get to a point of diminishing returns.
Exactly. On your time, because I did that when you first launched Price Boss, and I was playing with it because I love the tool. And it's a great tool, people. So check it out.
And I get that question a lot from people on Price Boss is, they'll say, look, I'm trying to put all this data in and it gave me, it kind of limited me out. And Price Boss does have some limits in terms of the number of comps, just because if you just let it go infinitely, it would be a really, really slow tool. But the reality is, and I think that the right question to ask is, how many is enough, right? So I would say that if you have less than 100 comps, you probably want more. But if you have more than 200 or 300 comps, you've definitely hit the point of diminishing returns.
Yeah, well, and in some areas, you won't get close to 100.
That's true. I mean, you got to work with what you've got. But I mean, I've had people trying to put 1,000 in there, and it bogs the tool down, and it doesn't give you necessarily much more precision in the answers.
No, yeah. So if I had that
by a top limit,
I would just filter by price lowest to highest, and maybe use the first 3 or 4 pages and be done.
Well, one of the things that I always do, like I do this in LandWatch with Price Boss too, is I always organize the data randomly. So I never want to do price high to low or never low to high, because then I'm only getting a portion of the data that's not truly representative. But if I just say, give me the newest, then I'm getting a mixture of high, low, high acreage,
Correct.
Low acreage, whatever my filters are, I'm going to get a mix of it, and it's going to give me a more accurate representation.
Yeah, do the newest, and then just take the first few pages.
Right.
Because any more than that, it's just diminishing returns.
That's right. But interestingly, so we could go and just look at a bunch of counties and say, okay, which one has the most the most vacant lots, and then we can whittle that down to say, okay, which one has the most transactions. But we only need a small percentage of that opportunity to really make a lot of money, and I think, if you just did that, it's pretty generic. You're basically saying, I'm going after whatever I can get. But the real better way, I think, is to understand what your strategy is. Because, if your strategy is, I understand who I'm trying to sell properties to, therefore I know what kind of properties I'm trying to buy. It may be a smart move to go after the smaller market, because it's a better market for the kind of properties you want to buy.
Yeah, such a good point. Yeah, and I cover this we cover this in a lot of detail in our course as well. But you've got large vacant recreational properties, and the kind of sweet spot areas from maybe 5-10 acres up to 40, and even up to 80, and the strategies for those. But then you've got You've got mobile home lots. You've got cabin lots. And so, you've got lots in the trees versus flat lots in the sagebrush that have great views, different price points, different buyers, as to what they want to do with it. So you can break that strategy down, and you might want to specialize on cabin lots in the hills with amenities. And in that case, you can use something like DataTree's got a beautiful polygon tool, so you can, map out those areas graphically, and then set your filters, and then your list is going to be smaller. So maybe I want to be the cabin lot guy, and I can go boom, 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 and hit maybe 3 areas in this county and 5 areas in that county, and my total might be, I'll tell you, I did a recent a while back, I did a mail campaign that I had some very specific criteria, and in Texas, and there's a lot of counties in Texas, a lot of small counties. I had a 25 county mailer, and it was only 1,500 records. So, and I think we picked up 4 deals out of that. But so you can get very specific, or you can go after it all. A lot of it just depends on your budget as well. But there's very different methodologies. We can talk in general about, rural vacant larger lots. And then we can get very specific with regards to some of these others. So coming back to your point, you might want to go after the smaller county depending on your strategy.
So it's this difference between the total available and the served available, right? The served available is where we say, okay, I don't need to know the total number of properties. I need to know the number of properties that match my strategy. That's the served. So it's going to be a smaller number. And just kind of like what you were talking about with the cabins, I have a friend who grew up in Wichita, and his dad was a doctor in Wichita, had money, and they bought or built actually a home on a piece of land out in the Ozarks, in a beautiful, beautiful place that I've been to. And what I realized is that there are these subdivisions which are just platted out properties with the roads. And the kind of people who are really interested in that were these wealthy doctors and lawyers and professional people from, anywhere within a 3 to 5 hour driving radius around that. And so you can create a very specific strategy for a very specific audience. And then say, I'm going to go look for that kind of land, and I'm going to pitch it to these professional people because, I'm going to use a certain kind of language and a certain kind of promotional message to them. And, they're going to go and be able to build their big vacation homes on the lake and all of that. And so what matters is that I'm limiting my data set to the kind of properties that I think I'm going to sell in my strategy. And one of the really cool things that you can do in DataTree using the mapping tool is you can look at the properties, say, that were sold last year, and map them. And you can see where the cluster, and you can filter it based upon the kind of properties you're looking at. And then you can see the clusters. So you can say, okay, it's not everything in the county. It's actually, there's a cluster over here and a cluster over there. And maybe that relates to a specific subdivision, or certainly it relates to a specific geographic area, smaller than the county. So, there's this ability to really hone in and get that data set from, the total available market to the serviced available market, and then all the way down to, okay, within that serviced available market, I think I can get 10 or 20% of it. And that represents maybe 50, 60 properties a year, or maybe less, maybe even 20. But even if it was 20 properties per year, if it was that strategy, you could make a fortune.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like about strategies like that is, when you're pre-identifying your buyer pool, you can also pre-sell a lot of those properties, or at least have several customers on the hook waiting, because you've qualified these buyers and the fact that they are looking for properties in that area, so that you can have them sold right away. You can even have them sold and double close them before you put any money out.
Absolutely. One of the things I do using LandSpeed is that in the when I build my subscriber list, to mail out my weekly promotional emails, I create these different segments. So I can have a segment based on the strategies that I'm working on, so that when I send that promotional email out, it's got the right language, it's got the right messaging, and it's got the right properties. Because I never really operate. I try never to do just one strategy, because times change, economies change, geographies change. And I can find all of a sudden that strategy just doesn't work anymore. So I don't necessarily want to have all my eggs in one basket. But I can have a segment for this strategy and a segment for that one. And that's how I send out my promotional emails.
And I like that I do that for land as well. I mean, you can get very honed in and specific. But I like being able to have multiple strategies. So maybe I'll get honed in and specific on this for these, high-end home builders, and over here for cabin, over here for recreational lots. You could just say, I'm going to mail the whole county. Just depends on your budget. But focusing on those areas and learning, kind of becoming the expert and learning the nuances of the area and whatnot will help you to sell them better and actually in turn be a better buyer. But as you're starting out, it takes a while to develop all the skills, focus, get great at one thing, then add another. You can shotgun blast too. I've done the shotgun blast and done fine at it. But I think I've definitely seen some people in the industry who have still keep their portfolio diverse, but have made a lot of money by really focusing on a certain area. And I do like, even if you get focused, I like maintaining somewhat of a diversity of areas and property types and sizes, because then you've got a broader audience to market to. You should always be selling something if you've got a diverse inventory.
Excellent. Well, that's about all we have time for today. So this was market sizing with land, because size does matter.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, had a bit of fun, and walked away with some actionable insights that you can apply to your business. Dave and I have got some great content and interviews planned, so don't forget to rate and review, and of course subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. If we mention any interesting links or tools, you'll find them in the show notes. To learn more about Land.MBA, visit our website at, wait for it, Land.MBA. See you next time on the Land.MBA podcast.